Hello everyone, and welcome to the What's New in SharePoint 2016 webinar. Today's presenter is Vlad Catrinescu, MVP, Microsoft Valuable Professional, and President of vNext Solutions. I am Scott Restivo, CEO of Crow Canyon Systems. We are the ones hosting this webinar, and we're very glad to present this SharePoint 2016 information to the SharePoint community. First, a little housekeeping and some stuff about Crow Canyon, and then we'll jump into the webinar in a few minutes. So let's get going. Crow Canyon Systems, we're the ones hosting this webinar. We have been in business for almost 20 years. We've been doing core business applications for quite some time on the Microsoft platforms, first with the kind of Exchange Outlook world, and now the last 8 to 10 years on the SharePoint and Office 365 realm. We're based in California, Benicia, California. And what we've done with SharePoint and Office 365 is we developed what we're calling the productivity platform. What this is, it takes the base SharePoint and Office 365, which are, certainly have quite a bit of functionality right out of the box, but when we were building the business applications on top of them, we found that there's quite a number of additional components that are needed to turn it into a full business application platform. So what we've done is we developed this group of functionality, you might call it UI, UX stuff, branding, workflows, web parts, apps. Apps, of course, apply to Office 365, custom coding. And there's an example of some of those apps right there, like email synchronization, forms manager, so the form shows up nicely, actions alerts, et cetera, that make it into a true productivity platform. And then we've used that platform that we developed to build, first of all, core business applications. These are such things as help desk and asset management, et cetera. And these are in use around the world by organizations of all sizes. We've also have a number of custom SharePoint and Office 365 development projects we've been involved in for a number of years, and quite some interesting projects, and it's interesting to see what people want to do or would like to do with SharePoint, and the places you can take it are quite interesting. So those projects have been very fruitful and interesting to engage our developers on. So either way, the kind of bespoke or out of the box, so to speak, application with some customization, configuration elements to it, or just pure straight out of the box custom development projects. That's what Crow Canyon has been doing for the last 8 to 10 years that SharePoint's been out, and of course we've been in business 20 years. We've been doing it back since the beginning. We've been flying a little bit under the radar. We have a lot of customers, many repeat customers, but a little bit under the radar. For the last couple of years, we started to come out and go to more shows, get more involved in the community, and start to, to let people know about what we're doing. And this webinar is part of that. So what I want to show you is some of the applications we have going here. IT help desk, customer support, asset management, purchasing, contracts, facilities, equipment tracking, all kinds of core business applications that people use. And like I say, these are in production. These are in the real world. We have SharePoint 2013, SharePoint Online, 2010, 2013 online. And we're going to, of course, be updating this for 2016. We've also done a number of interesting projects, and again, with the bubbles here, I guess, but we got onboarding, document management, integration with databases, compliance. Compliance has been pretty popular lately with some rules that come out for instance, the electric or water industries, security access requests, marketing materials, all kinds of things we can do on SharePoint and Office 365. We find it really exciting and interesting to engage with companies and find out what their needs are and see how we can help them out with these kind of different tools they need, products or applications they need. So here's some web parts and tools, just a short sample of the many that we have. We use those in our productivity platform when we're building the applications or building the custom projects. We also have some of them for sale, so we can talk about that. If you want to learn more about Crow Canyon, you can go visit our website. It contacts us sales. Our blog's got some interesting articles lately. Talk to us at some of the upcoming events. We'll be in Austin, SharePoint Tech Fest, Denver, SP Fest in March. I can get you details on that, but a lot of events, a lot of SharePoint Saturdays, SharePoint Fest, those kind of things, SP TechCons. Also, we have the social channels, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all that stuff. So hopefully you'll find, we can help you out. We'll talk about anytime we can talk about your needs, your requirements for SharePoint or Office 365 development, applications, and glad to have those kind of discussions. We find them quite interesting to find out what people want and what they need, and help them out to do whatever organization or business more make it work better. So glad to do that. Glad to host this webinar. We're very happy to have Vlad Catrinescu leading it. We'll switch over to him in a minute. Right now, I just want to go a few of the housekeeping things about the GoToWebinar. Questions, there's a questions feature. Now the deal with that is basically that with a lot of people, there's a lot of questions, and we decided we'll handle those after the webinar, after Vlad's presentation, but the last part of the webinar is what I mean. And also, don't worry, we always get a list of the questions, and we'll follow up. If we can't get it into the time frame we have now, we'll be sure to follow up by email. Vlad is talking about creating a blog that answers some of these questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions about 2016. We all have them, and we want to help each other out to get the answers we need. So if we can't answer them in this webinar, we'll be sure to follow up, and Vlad will, he said he's going to create a blog article or other information, maybe, whatever way seems the best way to disperse that information. Audio, well, if you're not hearing, your audio is already available. After the webinar, about a day or two, we'll send a recording and some follow-up emails after the webinar. And if you ever want to unsubscribe for any of that stuff, just go right ahead. It's no problem. But hopefully it'll be interesting information that you'll want to follow up on. And then there is, I put my email address here. Any issues during this webinar, just give me send me an email, and I'll see if I can help you out with them, or see what we can do about it. And that's not really for questions about SharePoint 2016. It's more like issues with the webinar functionality. So I think we're good to go. Vlad, you ready? Oops, that's the last one.
I am.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. And I'm going to switch over to you. And, well, here's Vlad. Here you go.
Perfect. Let me show my screen. Tell me when you see a big SharePoint
Yeah.
desktop background.
I do, and I hope everyone else does too. So there you go.
Perfect. So
okay, while you're getting ready, you want to pop up that question, right? About.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a small question for everybody. As I said, we're not going to be able to get all the questions in this webinar. We're going to extend it for those who want to, so we get as many as we can. But we're also going to blog a few interesting facts. So we have some questions for you. The first one is, what version of SharePoint are you currently on? So we're going to leave it on for about 30 seconds. If you can, Scott, you should get a poll open message. This is you can vote. Just select the question, and in about 15 seconds we're going to close it and start with the content.
Yeah, it's up there, and people are filling it out, it seems like. Okay, great.
Perfect. So do we start?
I'll give it a couple more seconds. It seems like the voting is still coming in.
I'm too excited to share this stuff about SharePoint.
I know you are. I think we're good here. Let's close it here. We got about over 90% of the people voted. So thank you for that. And here, go ahead, Vlad. You can take it from here.
Perfect. So right now you should see my slides. Can you?
Yes, I can. There it is. SharePoint for IT 2016 Professionals. And there's your picture. There you are in person.
Okay, so I'm taking it. So let me introduce myself to everybody. I'm an independent SharePoint consultant from the cold Montreal, Canada. I'm also a SharePoint Server MVP, and I try to travel all over the world. I try to blog and make sure to help as many people as I can. I'm also a Pluralsight author. For those of you who don't know Pluralsight is an online training platform that has over 4,500 videos right now, not only on SharePoint, but on everything Microsoft, everything open source, and everything creative as well, if there's any Photoshop or 3D animation fans in this webinar. And also, like I said, international speaker. Last year I traveled over 45,000 miles only for the SharePoint conferences, so only for work. So I think that's the great part about the SharePoint community, is that it's global, and it also allows us speakers to visit a bunch of countries. So you can find me on Twitter if you want to tweet during the webinar. My username is @Vlad Catrinescu, which is really easy to spell. And some of you probably already follow my blog at absolutesharepoint.com. So let's take a look at what we will talk about today. So first of all, we're first going to talk about the evolution of SharePoint. You probably heard a lot of Microsoft marketing, a lot of MVPs say, oh, SharePoint 2016 is coming from the cloud down. So we're going to talk exactly about what that means. And my goal is that I know you're all IT pros and I don't want to make you all suffer through all the marketing slides. So all the marketing and all the light blah blah, we're going to make it really short. But I want to make sure that you all understand what that means and why Microsoft keeps talking about that. Then we're going to look at the infrastructure changes. You probably all heard about MinRole and about the new topologies in SharePoint 2016. We'll then take a look at the exciting new features like fast site creation, durable links, DLP. Those features are great for end users, but as IT professionals, you need to know how to enable them, and you need to know what they do so you can help your users use them. Then we have to look at depreciated features like Excel services and Forefront Identity Manager. Then we'll take a look at hybrid. You know, hybrid is really big in SharePoint 2016, and Microsoft keeps talking about it. We'll look at what exactly are the new features in hybrid, such as this hybrid search service application or the cloud search service application, hybrid sites, profile redirection, and all the other features. We'll then look at how do we upgrade. If we're on SharePoint 2010 or 2013, how do we upgrade so we can go to 2016? Then we'll look at what's next, what's the timeline, what's happening with SharePoint 2016, and then we'll have the questions and answer period where we're going to try to get as many questions as possible. But as Scott said, we're maybe not going to have time to answer them all, but what I'm going to promise you is that all the questions that we're not answering live, Scott is going to send them to me, and I'm going to answer them in a blog post for you. So I promise that every question will get answered. I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'm sure it's going to be fun. So let me start real fast with the evolution of SharePoint. And I actually took this slide from Bill Baer from one of the presentations at Ignite that shows a bit the release history of SharePoint. So let me go fast through that fancy animation. SharePoint 2016 is the 6th version of SharePoint. SharePoint came out in 2001. Why I'm showing you this slide is that a lot of people think that the Microsoft Cloud is new. A lot of people think that Office 365 is the first version of Microsoft Cloud. Actually, Microsoft started offering cloud solutions back in 2002. They were called Microsoft Managed Solutions. What they were back then, basically private hosting. They installed SharePoint for you, they installed a server and let you use it only through the UI, but not give you access to the server. Then in 2006, it got renamed to Microsoft Online Services, and in 2012, got renamed to Office 365. In the past, how Microsoft created SharePoint is that they developed the on-prem server. So they created SharePoint Server 2010, and then they took the server, they put it in the cloud and hosted it for clients. And that's how they did it. They didn't evolve the cloud version. But since Office 365, Microsoft keeps updating Office 365, so SharePoint Online, adding updates every 2 weeks, every month. And then what they did with SharePoint 2016, they took a snapshot from the cloud and they patched it for on-prem. And actually, it's funny because I saw a blog post about it yesterday. Somebody had a question. It's not an actual snapshot. They didn't actually take a snapshot of SharePoint Online, but it's the same code behind. So they merged the code between SharePoint Server and all the updates in the cloud, and they made it available on-prem. So in theory, SharePoint 2016 is the most tested version of SharePoint ever because it has been in the cloud and tested by millions of users every day. So hopefully we shouldn't have as many bugs as we did in the past versions. Some quick stacks, and those stacks are actually quite fresh. Jeff Tepper announced them at the European SharePoint conference in November 2015. Well, I'm only sharing this because a lot of people are saying, oh, SharePoint is dead, SharePoint is dying, everybody's going to the cloud. Let's see what you think after I show you those stacks. My SharePoint currently has 75, oops, there's missing a 0 over there, 75,000 customers. So 75,000 enterprises use SharePoint and over 160 million users. That's a lot of users if you look at how many people pay for a license, how many people use SharePoint every day. If we look at SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business Online, Microsoft says they have a 200% monthly active user growth. So maybe those users were paying for it before, but now they're actually starting to use it. And the last thing for online stacks, 40% of the seats are online. So 40% of those 160 million users pay for SharePoint Online licenses. So there's still 60% of enterprises on-prem. So on-prem is not dead at all. And what I saw with my clients is that a lot of them, they actually buy SharePoint Online licenses because if you bundle everything, they get to be cheaper in Office 365. But a SharePoint Online license also covers the SharePoint Enterprise CAL. So even if they pay for SharePoint Online, they use it on-prem. So I think more than 60% of companies still use SharePoint on-prem. Okay, enough with the marketing. Let's get into the infrastructure stuff, in the stuff that us IT pros love. So first thing first, let's look at the hardware requirements. Same thing as SharePoint 2013. 12 to 16 gigs of RAM, 4 cores, 80 gigs of free space on the C drive. As you know from a real-world experience, that's the minimum requirements. Depending on what the server does, you might need to add more. And if you're doing a development server, I suggest between at least 16, especially if you have search on it. Software requirements from the operating system, you need at least Windows Server 2012 R2 or Windows Server 2016, which is not out in RTM yet. From the SQL Server side, you need SQL Server 2014 SP1 or SQL Server 2016. However, there are some features that you might be missing out, especially in the business intelligence, if you don't go with SQL Server 2016. We'll talk about BI a bit later, but make sure to remember that if you have the option and the possibility, go with SQL Server 2016. We also have some increased limits. So if we look at the content database, before Microsoft recommended keep it under 200 gigabytes, now they said, hey, you can go into terabytes, no problem. We can now have up to 100,000 site collections per database. And something that you need to remember, if you can, doesn't mean you should. So even if you can have 100,000 site collections per database, I still suggest you split it up in multiple content databases. The list threshold has been a big topic in forums everywhere. Let me actually take a minute to talk to you about the list threshold. So everybody heard that there is a limit in SharePoint. You cannot have more than 5,000 items in the same list. Let me first tell you that that's not a limit. That's a recommendation, and I've already seen clients, the max I've ever seen is 120,000 items in the same list view. And it works. Does it work well? Does it work fast? No, but it's not a limit. And the problem wasn't even with SharePoint. The problem was that in SQL, if you query more than 5,000 rows from the same table, the database locks. So that's why Microsoft didn't want to create a DB lock. So they said, hey, if you keep it under 5,000, we should give you guys optimal performance. Over 5,000, you guys are going to be slow, so we suggest that you index a column. So when we do the query, we never select more than 5,000 at the same time. Another one that's really popular for IT pros and users, the max file size. Before it was 247 megs, so 2 gigabytes. Now the default limit is 10 gigabytes, which is 5 times more. However, that's not a hard-coded limit. That's a recommendation. I already tried to upload 15 gigs and it worked. And Microsoft doesn't use the same upload mechanism behind as it did before. Before, probably with the speed we had, if we tried to update 10 gigs, it would have took 10 hours. Now it uses a new algorithm behind, new technology, so the upload is a lot faster and we can go more than 10 gigs. However, as IT pros, make sure that you watch your content database sizes because you don't want everybody putting all their Blu-ray films in there and the content databases are going to explode. Now let's talk about the biggest topology change, which is MinRole. Before we look at MinRole and what it's trying to improve, let's take a trip back in time and look at what we had before back in the days of SharePoint 2010. So back in SharePoint 2010, we were talking about traditional topologies. What's the traditional topologies? Well, we had front ends and we had application servers. We all know that. We all used those terms before, right? So how did traditional topologies work? Well, when a user wanted to access a page, they typed the URL, it went to the load balancer, which then dispatched the request to one of the front ends. Pretty easy until now. Let's add a bit more details. So those web front ends and application servers were running different services on them. For example, front ends were running the foundation web application, of course, as well as maybe the index and query, while the app servers were running all the other services, such as user profile sync, managed metadata, crawl, secure store, and everything else. So let's take it a bit further. What happens when a user, what happens when a user requests a page, and on that page you have a picture, you have something about the user, so you need the user profile you need to get the user profile, and you also have some managed metadata, some taxonomy on that page. So you're going to need to get that as well. So the user is going to go to the network load balancer, which is going to go to the front end, because that's where we configure it to go. But then the front end is going to say, hey, I don't have any of those services running on me. So I have to go talk to the service application load balancer, which is going to bring me to another server so I can get that information. So the request is going to go to the application server 1 and application server 2, for example, one of them for the managed metadata and the other one for the user profile. Those two request information to the front end, and that information is returned to the user. As you see, it's not optimized at all. We have all this useless network communication happening. So that slows up SharePoint, and SharePoint has never known to be Formula 1 fast. It was always a challenge, how do we make really fast SharePoint pages and make them really useful? But frankly, do we really have only two server types in SharePoint, only front-end and application servers, or we can split it out even more? So in SharePoint 2013, we got this new topology type called Streamlined Topologies. In Streamlined Topologies, we went from 2 to 4 servers. One of them was the front end, the other one was the batch processing, the distributed cache, and the specialized workloads. So let's see what we run on each one of them. On the web front ends, we run everything that the user could request. So if a user goes to a page, if a user does something, anything that could be requested randomly without a schedule would be on the web front end. The batch processing server would be everything that is scheduled. For example, crawls, for example, user profile sync, for example, PowerPoint conversion. So all those heavy-duty timer jobs that we know they run on a schedule. So they run every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes. They're a batch processing server. Then we had distributed cache, which was new in 2013, that had the distributed cache and request management, and specialized workloads. Specialized workloads was like, hey, do you want to have a dedicated server for something? Do a specialized workload, and that's it. You're fine. Just put everything you want in there. So what was the benefit? Let's take the exact same scenario as before. User wants to go take a page with managed metadata and user profile. Goes to the NLB, NLB goes to the web frontend, and since all those services are already running on the local server, well, it's going to go directly to back to the user. So we stop wasting all this inter-server communication. We get the result to the user faster. However, it wasn't perfect. Let me show you a high availability, well, semi-high availability, this streamlined topology scenario. So we have two front ends, and since they're both in the same role, we're going to run the same services on them. So the user is going to go to the network load balancer, go to the web front-end one. But in SharePoint 2013, there wasn't any rule, any hard coding that said if you run that service on the server, don't go somewhere else. The server always went to the service application load balancer that directed that service call to a server. So it could go to web frontend 2 to get the user profile, which had to return it to the web frontend and then back to the user. So we were a lot better, we were a lot more optimized, but not 100%. We still had scenarios where the optimization wasn't there at 100%. So then we got MinRole. MinRole, we have 5 types of servers: front-end, application, distributed cache, search, and custom. So as you see, it's a mix between the front-end and application from the traditional and the distributed cache and search from the streamlined topologies. So what do we run on each one of them? It's really similar to the streamlined topology. So on the front end, we run everything that can serve end-user request. So if a user would access it when accessing a page in any type of request, it would be on the front end. If it's scheduled, is it on a timer job or everything, it goes on the application. Distributed cache runs on the distributed cache server. Everything search runs on the search server. And custom is anything you want. So let's say you want to add an extra server and you want to run the user profile sync and search on it, well, then you put it on custom. And then you're not going to have any problems. And also, the single server farm. The single server farm is really similar to the standalone installation that we had before. However, the difference is that before, in 2010 and 2013, the installer also installed SQL Express. So we did one installation, SQL was installed, SharePoint was installed, job done. Now, it doesn't include SQL anymore. So we need to install SQL Developer. We cannot install SQL Express anymore. We need to install SQL separately and then install a single server farm. We have to do all those installs separately. We're not going to have time to add servers in MinRole because this is only about 45 minutes, so I have to hurry up. But the MinRole selection, you do it when you add the server to the farm. So when you add the server to the farm, you specify the server role. Is it going to be a front-end, application, distributed cache, search, or custom? And once you have either single server farm or one of the multiple server farms, the other box gets grayed out. So you cannot have a custom and a single server farm in the same farm. You either stay in the top box or in the bottom box, but that's all. So MinRole is actually 2013 guidance from the streamlined topologies, but in code. So whenever a user goes to the same scenario as before, Microsoft hard-coded the service application load balancer to always return a service if it's running on the same server. So even if I have two web front ends running the same services, the load balancer knows that, hey, I got all those two services on the server, I'm going to go back directly to the user. So I'm 100% sure that I have optimized performance. But what are the differences between MinRole and Streamlined? Some people think it's another marketing trick from Microsoft, like what they did with failover clustering in SQL, and then they renamed it to always-on failover clustering, but it was exactly the same thing. So In our case, SharePoint is not the same thing. We actually have some great differences that can help us. So first, everything is hard-coded. All the services on which server they run, they are hard-coded. In Streamlined Topologies, they are guidance. That means in Streamlined, you maybe have Microsoft that says, on the web front end, you should run the managed metadata, the user profile, and the secure store. And then you have a bunch of MVPs, a bunch of experts, a bunch of Microsoft certified masters. We all have different opinions. And we all think that, hey, if we do this, it's actually going to optimize performance. And as an end user, you look at Microsoft, you look at what the community is saying, and you're like, okay, which one is the good one? Well, in MinRole, all the services on server are hard-coded. So whenever you say that a server is a web front end, you don't start services on your own anymore. Remember, whenever we did a service application in 2010 or 2013, the first thing we had to do is start that service on a server. Now in 2016, in MinRole, we simply create the service application, and the services are going to start themselves on the servers that are required. If you ever delete that service application, the service is going to stop automatically. So yeah, the service application load balancer always prefers the local instance before it was random. Another big plus that I find is that less scenarios for Microsoft to test. If we look at the history of Microsoft and cumulative updates, it's not been paradise. Some of them include a lot of bugs, and I think we had more of them that include bugs than actually fix bugs. And that is because Microsoft right now, they have millions of scenarios that they would need to test with every cumulative update. Now they know that, hey, we know that if somebody has a web front end, those are the services that are going to run. So we don't have a web front end in 20,000 different configurations. That reduces the types of testing that Microsoft has to do, and hopefully, and I say, well, hopefully, we're going to have less errors in the cumulative update and SharePoint 2016 patches. Also, simplify deployment. Like I said, we don't start services anymore. Imagine you already have a 4-server farm and you want to add another web front end. You don't need to add it to the farm and then look at other front end and start the services by hand and maybe forget one, do one too much. When you say, I add a web front end, all the web front end services are going to start themselves. So I have also a simpler farm scalability. Don't need to manually start services every time we add a server to our farm. So let's look at some topologies. SharePoint 2016 base topology plus a custom server. So what we'd have front end, distributed cache, application, search, a custom, and a SQL because we need a database, right? Now if we need to make it highly available, we double everything. So we have 2 front ends, 2 applications, 2 distributed cache, 2 SQL. So now we're at what? We're at 12 servers for a full highly available MinRole farm. Now if we also add Office Online Server, which by the way, Office Online Server is the new Office web apps. So now if we want a fully available SharePoint 2016 farm in MinRole with a highly available Office Online Server, we need 14 servers. What you need to know about MinRole. You need at least 4 servers to have a MinRole deployment. If you don't have 4 servers, select custom. Microsoft expects you to have 4 servers, 1 of each type. So web front-end, application, distributed cache, and search when you go into MinRole. If you don't have 4 servers, go into custom mode. You need to have all the roles in the farm before starting to create service application. So don't add the first server, then start to create a service application, because imagine you add an application server, then you want to create a managed metadata service application. SharePoint is going to be like, hey, I know I need to start this service on the web front end, but there's no web front end in my farm, so I don't know what to do. So make sure that you have all the required roles in the farm before starting to create stuff. If you don't have 4 servers, select custom. What does custom mean? Custom means you can do anything you want. So it's basically back to 2013. You start servers by yourself, you control everything, so you can actually, you don't need 12 servers to be in high availability mode for 2016. You can only have 2 servers in custom mode and manage them as you did before. Microsoft doesn't force you to go MinRole and buy 12 server licenses. And lastly, Office Web Apps is now Office Online Server. So let's do 3 small exercises to make sure that you understand them in a real-world scenario. So first one up is CONTOSO. CONTOSO is a small business that relies on SharePoint for their day-to-day activities. If SharePoint goes down, they lose money, so they need HA. However, since they don't have a lot of money, they can only have 4 SharePoint servers and 2 SQL servers. So what that means is that, hey, we need HA. We know that in MinRole, we need to have at least 8 SharePoint servers for HA, but they only have money for 4. So what we're going to do, we're going to have 4 custom servers and 2 SQL. So we're going to act as there are 2 front ends and 2 applications. We're in custom. We're going to answer to the business need in the required budget, and everything is going to work perfectly. Now FABRIKAM. FABRIKAM is a medium-sized company that uses SharePoint as an intranet and for light document collaboration. They know they don't need HA, and they have money for 4 SharePoint servers and 1 SQL. So what do we do in this case? We go into MinRole. So 1 front end, 1 distributed cache, 1 application, 1 search, and 1 SQL. If we can follow Microsoft's best practices and go into the MinRole roles, we're going to do it. And since their business needs and budget fit with MinRole, we can do it no problem. Lastly, and I forgot an animation here, Trey Research, they have a lot of money, they have 20,000 users, and they need something fully HA and no budget. So do whatever Microsoft recommends. So then we can go in MinRole and add 4 web front ends, 3 distributed cache servers, 2 applications, and 2 search, and 2 SQL, of course. So that's about it for MinRole. Time is running out fast, so let's talk about the new features. And yes, there's more than just MinRole in SharePoint 2016. So the first one, which personally I really like, is DLP, data loss prevention. What is data loss prevention? And I've seen a lot of people confuse DLP with DPM. DPM is a System Center product that does backups. DLP is used to find sensitive information before it gets leaked. So for example, you can say we cannot put credit cards, social security numbers, bank accounts, numbers into SharePoint. Well, we can create rules to make sure that if ever content of that type is added, we're going to have a notification and we're going to be able to find it fast. And you can search across SharePoint 2016, OneDrive for Business, and SharePoint Online. So what are the goals of DLP? Identify the information, monitor it. You can have reports and see what happens. Protect the information, so in case we find a document with that kind of information, block it so nobody else can access it, and end user education. So we can tell our users, hey, you did something wrong, and this is what you did wrong. So what I'll do, I'll go directly to the demo. I hope you all see my screen. Let me log in. I'll do it real fast. I actually have a full tutorial on how to enable DLP on your SharePoint 2016 site, and we're going to share it to you by email as well in the resources. So I'm not going to go over how to set it up. I will go over the experience as an end user. So what happens is I uploaded a document which is similar to this one, but this one I unblocked it on purpose. What that document has inside is credit card numbers or social security numbers. So let Office Web Apps open it, or Office Online Server now. Come on. Okay, while that opens, I'll show you the DLP Center. The DLP Center allows us to create reports. So for example, I want to create a DLP query. I create a new item, and then I have a bunch of compliance terms. You might, as an IT pro, you might not know what they all mean, and that's normal. I don't know all those rules either. However, Microsoft, for example, US financial data, they tell us, hey, this is the description, and this is the kind of information that it finds. Routing numbers, credit card numbers, US bank account numbers. And we can say maybe it's normal that users have only one in the document, but not two. So then you can say, over how many instances of that do I raise an alert? In our case, let's do one, because we don't want any of that stuff in our SharePoint. So the query gets built for me. I don't have to do anything. I can modify the query scope to either all SharePoint or only a site collection. And when I click search, I have the information. Hey, you see you have two results, two documents that have either a credit card number or US bank account number or a routing number. So this is the monitoring. This is how you can find all the content that has that kind of information. So this is the eDiscovery Center. We then have the Compliance Policy Center, and this is where we create the policies, so that's where documents get blocked. eDiscovery is simply for reporting. It doesn't block documents. It doesn't do any action. So here I created a data loss prevention policy for US personal identifier. Let me actually take the I created a PCI data security standard that finds credit card numbers, and then I will send an incident if it happens to compliance@demo.local, because as a SharePoint admin, I don't really care about all this stuff, but my compliance department really does. So I don't want to get my email spammed. I can send it directly to them. And I also chose that notify the user. So we can say, don't tell the user if he did anything wrong. We're going to handle it in the background. Or tell the user that he did something wrong, and also block access to the content. So only the last user who modified, the person who created the document, and the site admin can see it. So in our case, in the block document, we have credit card numbers as well as expiration dates and all that. So what SharePoint did? SharePoint, first of all, SharePoint sent me an email. SharePoint sent an email to the, and actually I'm running beta 2, which has a small bug. You'll see that both emails I'm showing you, they go to compliance@demo.local. However, this one should go actually to the compliance team, and the second one should go to the user. So the one to the compliance team will say, hey, we have an error with one of the documents. It matched sensitive information of PCI, so that's the kind of rule it broke. And we found 5 credit card numbers, and SharePoint is 85% sure that that's a credit card number. And Microsoft has a site on how does it create its confidence rules. So for example, if it finds a credit card pattern and an expiration date, maybe it's 60% sure. If it finds a credit card number, a name, an expiration date, and a 3-digit number, oh, then I'm 95% sure. So that's the email that the compliance team gets. And as for the user will get an email, hey, one of your documents had an error. It contained credit card number. And you can open the item to fix the issues. If I go to SharePoint, you'll see that the document got blocked. If I go at the policy tip, I see that, hey, access to this item is blocked because you did something wrong in it. And when I click on View Policy Tip, it's going to tell me what exactly I did wrong. So in this case, when it loads, it will say, you went against this rule, you have credit card numbers inside, and it was last scanned 16 minutes ago. So I really like this feature. It's something that some SharePoint companies I've been to, they paid an ISV thousands of dollars per year to get this feature. And now it's built into SharePoint, so I really like it. So that's about it for DLP. If you have any questions about it, don't hesitate to ask me after. Now let's go back to the slides and talk about Microsoft Identity Manager. So Forefront Identity Manager is gone, and it got replaced by Microsoft Identity Manager. As you see, Microsoft didn't go too far with marketing and branding. They kept it quite similar. MIM, or Microsoft Identity Manager, is not built in SharePoint anymore. It's a fully separate product. So let me tell you what it means and what are the implications for us. If we look at SharePoint 2013 to sync our users, we had 3 choices: SharePoint Profile Synchronization, SharePoint Active Directory Import, and External Identity Manager. Now we only have 2 choices: AD Import and External Identity Manager. SharePoint does support more than one identity manager. However, of course, the one that Microsoft recommends is Microsoft Identity Manager. Why the change? I'm sure you all loved FIM and you all were able to configure it the first try and never had bugs with it, but Microsoft had to change FIM. First of all, because the code came from 2010. So it was really old code, and it was tough to set up. It wasn't as easy, a lot of bugs and a lot of stuff, and it wasn't really integrated with SharePoint best practices. Remember, when you look at service accounts, what does everybody tell you? Don't put the farm account into local admins, except when you synchronize user profiles, because you need to have it there. So that's the kind of places where FIM didn't really play well with SharePoint's best practices. Also, users from different domains couldn't be part of the same audience. And I had this problem at a client. I never knew about it before, but it's really a pain that you can't put people from different domains in the same audience. And one of the big reasons, Forefront Identity Manager 2010 doesn't work with Windows Server 2016. So of course they had to make something, because SharePoint runs on Windows Server 2016, so we couldn't keep SharePoint 2016 running on old versions of SharePoint. So let's look at the differences between AD Import and MIM. AD Import is used by Microsoft in Office 365, so it's stable and performant. So you know it's being used by hundreds of millions of people every day, and it doesn't bug that often. So it's stable and performant, and it's being used a lot. However, it only supports a single forest. So that can be a problem for some organizations. And a bigger problem, in my opinion, no custom mappings and unidirectional. So that means I can't modify stuff in SharePoint and sync it to AD, and also look at custom mappings. Some of the stuff, well, the custom mapping I see the most often is a picture. We want to get the people picture from the Active Directory. We cannot do that with AD Import because we cannot do custom mappings. MIM is a standalone product released in August 2015. It's really modernized platform, so it's really a brand new. It supports hybrid AD deployments, which is really great. However, in a best practice mode, and I'll get to that later, you would need to put it on an extra server. And also from my experience, it's a lot harder to set up. Maybe because it was the first few times and you get too used to it after, but it wasn't a joy to set up the first time. So if we look at the architecture in the best practice world, we'd have a separate server for Microsoft Identity Manager. Microsoft Identity Manager also needs SQL to store its databases, but we can put those on the same SQL server as SharePoint, no problem, and sync it to AD, sync it to SharePoint. However, what most companies I think will probably do, unless they really have a load on Microsoft Identity Manager, is put it on the application server. And that works as well, and it's supported. Durable links, this one will be really popular for end users. So now instead of having a path-based URL, we have a resource-based URL. So let me actually show you what it looks like already. You see the yellow part of the URL, that's our resource ID. So even if we move that document in another document library, in another site, whenever somebody accesses that link, the link is still going to work. It's not going to break in SharePoint, like in SharePoint 2010 and 2013, where if we renamed the document, the link broke, or if we moved it, the link broke. It only works with Office documents and PDF. That is because it works with everything that can be opened with Office Online Server. So right now, you'll see that Office Online Server, as a SharePoint IT Pro, you're going to have a lot more requests to install Office Online Server than you did before, because durable links needs it. You're going to also need it for BI, and we're going to talk about it later. And it also brings a lot of improvements in search. Fast site collection creation allows you to create site collections a lot faster, because instead of creating a blank site and activating features one by one, SharePoint is now going to create a template at a database level and copy everything at the database level. So it should be a lot faster. However, we're not going to go through the exact steps, but you need to do it through PowerShell. You cannot do a fast site in the UI. Project server in SharePoint, no more separate BICs and patches. It's now simply a service application. You don't have to keep two different farms anymore. It's same patch patches everything. Same installer installs everything, so it's a lot easier to manage. Large file support, 10 gigs by default, and you can go a lot higher. And new upload system for faster uploads. And as before, you can set the limit per web application. SMTP, you can encrypt your SMTP as well as put it on a non-default port. So before we're limited to port 25, now we can put it on any port we want as well as encrypt it. Other cool features mostly for end users: improved mobile experience, open document format, a lot more support with special characters, better recycle bin, and improved IRM. Now let's go to what we lost. What did we lose? First of all, SharePoint Foundation. It's go big or go home. So you either stay on SharePoint Foundation 2013 if you want a free version of SharePoint, or you go to SharePoint Online, but you have to pay. So no more SharePoint Foundation 2016. SharePoint Designer and INFOPATH, I'm putting it here mostly as a joke, because SharePoint Designer and INFOPATH 2013 will work with SharePoint 2016, but you will not have a SharePoint Designer 2016 or an INFOPATH 2016 Office application. Excel services. We don't have Excel services anymore. Excel services is gone. And you see there's a list of stuff like trusted data provider, trusted file location, unattended service account that we're going to lose. However, if we have Office Online Server, we can view and edit Excel workbooks even if they have a data model. We still have the ODC file support, and we still have a bunch of stuff. And that's why I'm saying, as an IT pro, Office Online Server is something that you're going to probably have to install with your SharePoint 2016 deployment, because so many new features depend on it. From a BI point of view, all the Power Pivot stuff, everything still works, but right now only on SQL 2016. Right now it doesn't work on 2014, and I'm not 100% sure if Microsoft is going to make it work with SQL 2014. So everything still works as it did before. And lastly, again, Forefront Identity Manager, we lost it. Do you already miss it or not? So now I actually have five really fast minutes to talk about hybrid features, show a little demo, talk about upgrading, and I think we're going to go a bit over time for the questions. If you want to stay, you're welcome to stay for the questions. We can stay another maybe 15 minutes. And if not, make sure to type them, and I'm going to answer them in a blog post. So SharePoint Hybrid Configuration Wizard is now really easy. So it's really a UI-based installer instead of a 10-page technical manual. So what you need to have the user profile service application, My Sites configured, app management, and subscription setting service applications configured. What features do we get? Hybrid theme sites. So we can follow sites on-prem, and they're going to show up on online. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ditch the slides, and I'm going to show them live to you in a demo. So let me start with hybrid sites. And I hope you all see my demo. Right now I'm in Office 365, and I have my tenant name is globalmatics.org, and I also have an on-prem SharePoint 2016 site called Intranet. I follow the site, and the site now appears in my followed sites in Office 365, so I only have one place to go to see all my followed sites. Another cool feature is the profile redirection. before in 2013, we actually had two profiles. We had a profile in the local my site, and we had a profile in Delve. Now with profile redirection, whenever I click, for example, on Alex over here, I told my SharePoint, hey, Alex, his profile is in the cloud. So whenever I click on Alex, I go to his profile in Delve. So we only have one profile now. We don't have two profiles anymore. Cloud Search Service Application. One benefit, while I'm in Delve, Cloud Search Service Application, I go to my activity. Hey, I can see documents in Delve that are actually in my intranet site. So let me go back to my intranet site. I have a document here called SharePoint Administrator. I can see my document in Delve, which is really cool because we keep the document on-prem, we keep everything on-prem, but we can use the latest and greatest cloud features while the content is on-prem. So let me do a quick search, show you the Cloud Search Service application. Let me search SharePoint. Actually, let me go in the real SharePoint search, not in Delve. Let me go over here. Search everything just to show you that it works for real. SharePoint Administrator. I'll click Enter. What you'll see is that I'm in Office 365, and I can see results from both on-prem, so intranet.globalmatrix.org, as well as Office 365. It's all in the same page. And if we look at what we had before, let me just show you a quick slide. What we had before is we had to do result blocks. So we had to do a block for 365 results, a block for on-prem results, but we couldn't see the best results no matter where it is from. Now we can actually get the best result no matter if it's on-prem or online. We get to see the best result and in one page, so we don't have to go between pages anymore. So that's about it for hybrid. Really fast upgrading to SharePoint 2016. If you're on 2013, it's the same thing as you did from 2010. So version to version, you attach the content databases, update content database, and everything works fine. If you're on 2010, Bill Bear, which is a senior program manager at Microsoft, asked a question on Twitter, hey, would you guys love if you could migrate from SharePoint 2010 to 2016 without stopping at 2013? And everybody was super happy. Everybody was like, we want this. But finally, it won't happen. Sorry to be a buzzkiller, but Microsoft said, we're not going to do it. We're not going to invest resources on it. We're going to focus on making 2016 great. So what do? You have to go from 2010 to 2013 to 2016. Almost the same procedure as if you went from 2007 to 2013. You need to make that stop in the middle. Zero downtime patching. You probably all heard about it, but I'm sure unless you're in the tap like me, none of you could actually try it. So zero downtime patching is actually not a myth. It works. You need to have MinRole in HA. So remember, DAX, 8 SharePoint servers at least. And I'm going to skip the fancy slides. I'll just go here is that you know that SharePoint, to patch SharePoint, you have two steps. First one is to install the update. And after you install the update everywhere, you run the psconfig, which is the configuration wizard. Before we could actually install the update and run psconfig on all but one server without downtime. On SharePoint 2013, we had a downtime when we did the psconfig on the last server because of the schema update on the SQL. The last server to get the psconfig had a schema update, so that brought our SharePoint down. So the only difference between 2013 and 2016 from a patching point of view is that the schema update doesn't cause a downtime anymore. So you, in theory, and I'd say, well, in theory, you could patch SharePoint during the day. If you can, doesn't mean you should. I still think you should do it off hours, but you could do it without your user realizing it. But you need to have an HA MinRole deployment. What's next for SharePoint? Well, in August, SharePoint 2016 Beta 1 came out. In November 2016, Beta 2 came out. And just yesterday, the release candidate came out. There are no new features between the beta 2 and release candidate, so only bug fixes, and Bill Barry said about 250 bug fixes between beta 2 and RC, so it's a lot of bug fixes, but no new features. And also, if you already have a cool SharePoint Server 2016 beta 2 farm set up, RC you can download it as only a patch. So you could patch your beta 2 and go to release candidate and be on the latest version without building a full infrastructure. So that's about it. Scott, do you want to take over and put up the question slide? Scott?
Oh, do you hear me now? Do you hear me now?
Oh yeah, don't forget the mute button.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's great. No, it's been 1 hour. I mean, people are there's no, like, we don't have to close the webinar at this time, so if people want to stay, they're welcome. I know people may have other obligations, but they're more than welcome to stay, and we can give it
it's my bad. I had too much stuff. I had too much stuff to tell you guys.
Well, there's a lot there. We should have made 1.5 hours probably, or do 2 sessions, but certainly a lot of really great information. So I'll put up the slide, and then we'll go. There are some questions that we'll go over here. And as Vlad said, we'll cover some of those that we can't get to in a blog post or other things. So let me put that up right now, change to my screen, and then I'll tell you some of the, there we go. Okay, I think the thank you screen with the contact info and all that is up now, right? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So let me go over to the questions. And first, thank you, Vlad. That was real, even for me, it was very, very interesting to hear all that and some really exciting, interesting changes. And people are asking if slides will be available. There's actually a handouts. I don't know if you can get to them, but GoToWebinar allows us to post up some handouts that you should be able to download, and one of the handouts is the slides. But if not, we'll send links.
We're going to send a link.
Yeah, we'll send links, and also a recording will be available. Give us about a day to get that together, and then you'll get an email either from us or automated from GoToWebinar or something, and you'll get that information. So let me run through a couple questions, and here's one. You know, this is one of the ones that is probably on everybody's mind. Why upgrade? What are some prominent reasons to upgrade? I guess in a way you covered that pretty much. You know, maybe you could summarize in a few bullet points the 3 or 4 prominent reasons you'd upgrade from 2013 to 2016. Just very quick.
Okay. So let's talk about SharePoint upgrade in general. If you're on 27 or 2010, you're not supported anymore. So go to 2016 as soon as possible. That's a no-brainer. If you're on 2013, a lot of people have said that there are not that many reasons to upgrade, but I don't agree with that. First of all, SharePoint 2016 is a lot more stable, so it's a lot faster to use for your users. Also, features such as DLP, which one of my clients, once they go to SharePoint 2016, they're going to save $50,000 annually only on that DLP feature, because right now they pay third-party products to do it. So if you need DLP, if you need stuff like that that's only on 2016, for sure it's great. Another one, durable links. You want to get people to move from file shares to SharePoint. Durable links can be a great argument to say, hey, look, on the file share, when you move something, your link is broken. You put it to SharePoint now, you can move it anywhere in the site, your link is not going to be broken anymore. So that's an extra argument to move people off file shares. Also, hybrid. Hybrid is getting better and better, and if you want to go hybrid, you get so many new features, so much better integration on 2016. Yes, the cloud search service application is available on 2013. However, one thing that you don't have the extendable ribbon. I'm not sure if you get the hybrid site, so I know that maybe you don't see the reason right away. However, as I've seen in some blog posts, Microsoft is going to add a lot more stuff on 2016 during the year. So make sure to keep your eyes out. I'm sure that you're going to see some new features in 2016 that are going to make the upgrade worth it even more.
Okay, good. One person was asking about MinRoles.
Yeah.
Can you confirm that you have to have all 4 MinRoles before you're considered to have a MinRole farm?
Yes.
Okay. So the answer to that was yes, right? You have to have all 4 MinRoles. Okay.
Technically, if you want to speak technically, custom is a MinRole. However, it's not considered like you don't have a MinRole farm. So you need to have at least the four different ones except custom to have a MinRole farm.
And is there a penalty for not having a MinRole farm?
It's like, you know, Microsoft's best practices. If you look in SharePoint 2013, they told us in your SharePoint farm, you only need to have one web application and go with hostname site collections. And that's the best practice we give you guys. Okay. I don't have any of my clients that actually followed it. They all still use a bunch of web application, path-based site collections. Microsoft gives you that recommendation because that's what they're going to test their patches with, and that's what they say, this is going to have the best performance, and that's what we recommend. However, you're going to be fully supported, and everything is going to work just as fine in custom.
Will each MinRole each server in the MinRole architecture require a SharePoint license?
You know, Microsoft licensing is like a guess box, but I'm 99% sure yes. But talk to your licensing specialist because licensing with Microsoft, it's complicated.
Yeah, I think it is. It's complicated. All right, and release candidate was released yesterday, there was some post or and that's great. And someone's asking about any update regarding the upcoming 2013 CU. Oh, that's the 2013
Service pack, you mean?
CU, I guess, in March and April. CU that is supposed to provide a lot of the features of 2016. I don't know. What's a C?
I never heard about that one. If you did, paste a link or send me a DM on Twitter. You have my Twitter on the screen at Vlad Catrinescu.
Yeah, or email.
Follow me. I'll follow you back and send you some information. I never heard about that.
Okay, again, best practices. SharePoint 2013 was to use one web app and multiple host header site collections. Its appears have been changed in 2016 with separate web apps for contents versus my sites. I can read that.
You know, if I understand I understand it. It works the same way. You could have your my sites in a hostname site collection configuration. So it's still doable. It's still considered best practice. However, as a non-Microsoft guy, as an MVP, I don't think you should have your my sites in the same web application as your content, simply because of all the mess it creates in the databases and all that stuff. So the Microsoft best practice still stays that you need to have everything in only one web application, including my sites, and that still stays and works in 2016. However, personally, I don't recommend it. And if you want, we can have a chat about it. Send me a tweet or something, or post a discussion on SharePointCommunity.net, and I'll give you my reasons why I don't personally recommend it.
Okay, Vlad, are you going to be in Austin? Someone's asking about if you're going to be in Austin.
I will not be in Austin. However, I'm giving a half-day workshop in Denver about what you saw today, but in 4 hours with a bunch of demos, a lot more details. So almost the same content, but like a deep dive in 4 hours. So I'll be in Denver, but not in Austin.
That's SharePoint Fest March 1st through 3rd, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Somebody asking about durable links. They'd like to see some more information on that, like a tutorial or that'd be. Now you don't have to answer the question now, but just a note that a demo on durable links would be attractive to some people.
Perfect. Yeah.
More detail on that, maybe a video or something. And any new BI features? Someone was asking. BI, business intelligence.
There's no new BI features. And talking about other stuff that you want to listen more. Do you want to ask the question, Scott, while we take the question?
Yeah. Let's pop that up before you guys head out. There's a lot of people are dropping.
I had a question for you guys. Are there any of the features that I showed you guys today that you would like more information on, or would you like another webinar that we can really dedicate 1 hour only to that subject and go deep dive into it? If there is one, please select it, and then we can maybe organize another webinar with more information on that topic instead of doing general like we did today.
Right. This is one where they can answer all 5, but we're thinking maybe the top 3 would be good. But whatever, you can have multiple answers on this one. So we're getting a lot on MinRole, data loss prevention, everyone really, zero downtime patching, durable links. They're all about coming out about even.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think you can do a lot of these webinars or tutorials. It's quite a lot of interesting things going on with SharePoint 2016.
Oh yeah, a lot of changes and a lot of changes for us as IT pros, I think. So we're going to be the ones that are going to have to adapt the most to the new deployment. The users are only going to enjoy the features, but we're going to have to change a lot in the background to give it to them.
Right. So, well, we got a pretty good response on that poll. So thank you again. I mean, I can even show the results if you want. So let's show that briefly, and while we're talking. But a few other quick questions, then we'll have to kind of wrap it up and answer the questions by email or blog post or whatever way works best.
Probably a blog post so everybody can benefit from it.
Right. Performance point is present yet in this version. I guess is performance point present?
Yes. It's present, it works, but no new improvements.
Okay. Another one is storage point upgrade. Any storage point upgrades?
Storage point? Is that a third-party product or a Microsoft product?
Okay. We might have to ask the questioner for
more
more
details. I'll answer that one in the blog or in the email.
Somebody's asking about mobile support. Any changes in mobile support?
Yeah, actually, I don't have, well, I don't know if you can, there's a better responsive, there's a better view for mobile, not in all the sites, especially in OneDrive for Business and Team sites. You have a different UI, a different layout that allows you to view it a lot better. However, it's not there yet. It's far from being perfect. And if you really want an application, you either need to customize it or buy it from a third party. However, it's a lot better than before.
Okay.
I'll show some screenshots in the blog post when I'll answer this question again and show some screenshots from a mobile phone.
Okay. Good. So I think we're, pretty much, there's some other questions, but I think these are probably better answered directly through email, through the blog post, and there'll be a lot of more questions as time goes on, I'm sure, with 2016 coming out. But for now, we'd like to thank everyone for attending, and also Vlad especially for the presentation. A lot of good comments. People seem to enjoy your presentation, so thank you very much for that. And Crow Canyon, SharePoint applications, Office 365 applications, we were very glad to host this, and hopefully we can provide you more information through other webinars or in our blog, and to see you at some of the shows, and stay in touch and keep track. So Vlad, I think we're good, right?
Yeah, thank you very much for attending. It was a pleasure for me to present, and I hope to see you in person at one of the events soon.
Great. Thank you very much. See you then. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.